Hi, my name's Jeff. I've done a few videos in the past and I've really not paid much attention to doing that many. However, a question has been niggling away at my mind for some time, and as per the title, to perceive or not perceive, that is a question. So what do we mean by perception? Well, perception is the foundation of our experience, our reality, based on our senses: sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, and in a lot of cases, intuition. Many people think that was a sixth sense, but to be honest, I think it's part of our natural makeup. We have this intelligent gut feeling that we know when something's right and something isn't. One of the issues that has been coming along recently and has been implemented for decades when you actually look at it is an incessant input of information through mainstream media. This information is ideological, misinformative, directional, implemented, and is designed to be applied psychology. Basically, the ideological formats that are being presented in mainstream media are all about changing your perception by giving you the sensory input to make you think that something is a different thing than what you've normally perceived it to be. And this is all about change. This is all about the manipulation of perception of humanity into a secondary, overwritten reality placed in part by people who want to implement their perception and their reality onto the world in general. This is a fairly simple psychological process. If you put enough information out there and enough people see it, they'll start to believe it, especially if it's been portrayed in mainstream media, such as TV programs, film, documentaries, radio, comics, magazines, predominantly in visual media. But at the end of the day, the ideological implementations that are being presented are all designed to change your perception of your reality. And perception being the foundation of that reality, if it's changed, then you start to fall into line with the ideological sense of a third party, i.e., you lose control of your particular experience and your particular reality. Now, you can see this happening on a day-to-day basis with the news, with TV programs, with films, movies. If people actually took a step back and looked at this and started to realise that this was occurring, there'd be far more people waking up to the fact that we are being moulded, shaped, manipulated and coerced into a perspective of perceptive reality that's not ours and fits in with some other agenda. Now, of course, the people and the oligarchs and the narcissists that are behind this have got a lot to answer for on the basis of that this has been implemented for decades. But what have they actually implemented? What they've been doing is slowly programming us through, funnily enough, programs that change what we perceive as being acceptable norms. Whether this be gender ideology, race theory, and lots of other different things that are being pushed at the moment that are based on non-corroborated scientific evidence, non-corroborated realistic medical information, and are just pushed as being the reality that we need to accept. Of course, the thing that the establishment that's doing this has got a problem with and they've already tried and tested various different scenarios in order to implement it, is that it's not quite going as well as they expected. Of course, the interesting thing about that is that if you want to change the perception and the reality and the awareness of somebody's life on a global scale, i.e. the whole population of the planet, when you can't do that, when you reach an obstacle of people that do not accept that change of perception and do not accept that change in reality, what do? If the programming's not working, what do? Well, and this is only an opinion, basically the only alternative they've got in order to implement their changes of their reality and their perception deception and change people's experience of the world that they live in, is if you can't do that to a set group of people within the population, you eradicate them. You have to remove the problem. And the way that they're removing the problem is by implementing man-made and orchestrated events that basically erase the opposition, whether that be 2020, whether that be conflicts, whether that be world conflicts, whatever. They're all designed at the end of the day to, in some respect, depopulate the opposition, depopulate the parts of the people that are not buying your narrative, that are not buying your ideology, and are not buying your programming, because they recognise it. I'm lucky enough to have studied in the field of fixing programming and fixing addiction and fixing and recognising psychological implementations. So I, for one, don't buy it. I don't disagree that people have the right to be whoever they want to be and exist and live their reality in whichever way they want to live their reality. That's not the issue. The issue is when those individual ideological realities, when those individual perceptions are being forced and pushed onto other people. How long do you take the programming before you realise you're being programmed, and how long do you take the programming before you start to kick back? Now, we can shout about it and talk about it, and we can discuss it on all of the different media platforms and all of the different avenues, but at the end of the day, when do we kick back? Because the longer we take to kick back, the longer they have to find a way to work around the areas of the population that aren't buying the perception deception and aren't buying the narrative. So when are you going to start looking into means by which you can fight back? Now, of course, one of the simplest ways to fight back against any kind of narcissistic dictatorial implementation is to just not comply. And that's what most of us need to do, is not comply. And that might sound a lot easier than it is, because we have threads and tethers to issues of establishment-based control that have been implemented over decades, if not centuries. And they're going to be difficult to untangle and difficult to separate from. If you can imagine yourself tied up in a very loose ball of string, there's a lot of thread there that needs to be pulled away and pulled apart. And that's not going to be an easy task. But, having said that, we are now at a stage in this reality where the threads are being untangled and many people are starting to fight back. Now, I'm getting on a bit. My mobility is not perfect and not brilliant, but just being able to talk about something or express an opinion and share views in respect of the implemented reality that's being forced upon us and that we're being coerced to believe is a reality. A classic example of that would be that 1984 by George Orwell was a warning, not a guidebook. The same with Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and also quite a lot of interesting information relevant to what's occurring today on the basis of perception deception, written by many people over many years, including Douglas Murray, David Icke, and various other people, Max Egan. Been talking about this for decades. Some of us, even myself, and even covertly over some years where people never knew I was looking into this, myself, for decades. Been saying things were going to happen years before they did. 2020, thousands of people predicted it. It's a change of perception. It's an implemented psychological distortion of reality to fit a narrative. And what we need to do, and what we need to start doing more of, is kicking back. Because if we don't, we are going to become a completely controlled human race. And I use the word human race because, to be honest, race has no place in the perception that is being implemented. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter where you're from, what colour your skin is, or what perceptions of ethnicity or cultural reality you have. You're entitled to it. But when that is being manipulated and used as a political lever, as a means by which to program the whole of humanity, irrespective of any of those other issues, we have to come together as a brotherhood. We have to come together and start talking to each other about the things that are being implemented that are controlling all of us, because eventually they are going to be controlling all of us. So I put this video together just to express my opinion based on my observations of what's occurring in the world today. And I hope people can see where that lies, how that is being implemented, and maybe they can start to take a step back and actually look at the bigger picture from a distance and see all of the implemented pieces, see all of the issues that are being pushed through the media that are designed to change your perspective and change your reality. And I hope that people find that of use and find their own path and their own way of perceiving what is basically the perception deception. And no, this wasn't scripted. I say this from my heart and from the top of my head.